You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 58, James Gang, Bang. And coming to you from the banging suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from Providence, Rhode Island, your co-host, John, 48 miles Matola.
Oh, man. It's been a while since you really stumped me. 48 miles. Oh, is that how long Rhode Island is?
Hey.
There you go.
You got it. I'm back to the Rhode Island trivia. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of topical humor. I'm back to Rhode Island trivia.
Based on how long the quarantine is going, you're going to run out, even with all this, you're going to just run out of material after a year's worth of lockup.
48 miles north to south.
That's true, because I mean as you know, the town I grew up in was the northernmost town of Rhode Island, and it was right on the Massachusetts border, and it would still, in less than an hour you could be at the southern tip, entering the very bottom of Connecticut. And when I tell people that are out here in the Midwest, that just blows their mind that you can traverse an entire state from the furthest point to the other in less than an hour. And the city I live in now, I can drive for 35 minutes and I'm still in the same city that I live in. It's the most ridiculously enormous city. It's great. Like, I'm like, I have to go to, my dermatologist is like 35 minutes from my house and it's still in the same city. It's so annoying.
It blows my mind. I was like, how, like, when you tell me stuff like that, because even like the town that I grew up in, I was just talking to my mom about it yesterday because I was driving through it, and like, I know people go back to the town they grew up in, which is only 20 minutes away from where I am now. But when I drive by like the church, the elementary school, the pizza place, and then my parents' house, it's just like, when I was a kid, that stuff may as well have been like 40 minutes away, but it was all within like 5 minutes of my house.
Yep.
Like when I used to like get the bus to go to elementary school, like that school was like you could walk from my parents' house to the elementary school. And like when I was a kid, it was like, even the high school is like not that far away. Like everything, it's just like
everything's super close.
Yeah, but it's
I remember it's on when you're going on 95 South in Rhode Island, as you're approaching Connecticut, there's that giant sign off the highway on the right-hand side. I think it's like Motel 8. Is that, you know what I'm talking about? It's a big sign. It sticks up above the trees. And I remember that was kind of the sign, like, oh my God, it's getting real. We're getting far from, it's probably 40 minutes from my house where I grew up. And I was like, oh, it's getting real. We're going on vacation now. Like, we're going to Disneyland or whatever. Or it's like, this is real. And it's just so funny now thinking about how close that is to where I actually grew up.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you want to keep up to date on this show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, your preferred podcatcher. And hey, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, which I forgot to check this week. So maybe we have some new reviews. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. All that stuff is at deeppurplepodcast.com. And if you want to hear more episodes like this, become a patron on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can help support this show. And what are you doing? You're not going to Starbucks. They're open some of their stuff for curbside pickups or whatever nonsense. Save that $1. Buy yourself some good coffee. Make it at home. And give that $1 a month. That's half a macchiato. That's like, what's $1 worth of Starbucks? It's nothing. You can't even get a full drink. So give that to us, and we will continue to produce great content for you. And then, of course, leave us that review on Apple Podcasts.
Which, no new reviews.
No new reviews, yeah.
Nope, the last one was the last one that you read, which was a review, I think, about the
the California Jam.
The California Jam show, yeah, which was from like mid to late April. So nothing new yet. So come on, more reviews. Why don't you?
Yeah, come on now, please. Thank you. Speaking of our patrons, we got to thank our patrons. And hey-o, What do you know? We don't have a new patron, but we have a new tier that's being created. The gauntlet was thrown by Ryan M. when he created the Turn It Up to $11 tier. And wouldn't you know, Steve Seaborg, not to be undone, said, I see your $11 and I'm going to create a $15 tier. Steve Seaborg coming in at $15. And what are we going to be calling that tier? Do you remember?
I
You
I
came up
named
with
it and I named it and I forgot, right? No, wait, the high ball shooter.
Yeah, that's right. Steve Seaborg is the first member of the $15 high ball shooter tier.
Hey,
Oh my goodness. Ryan M coming in at the $11, turn it up to $11 tier. And then the lonely $10 super trooper tier. No one is in that tier anymore. Everyone's abandoned trying to outdo each other.
Oh,
So now I think we should change that one to the no one came tier. I think it's
I like that.
the most appropriate.
I like that for now. Yeah.
So it's vacant. If you would like to become a member of that tier, just go on Patreon. It's still there. It's called the Super Trooper tier right now, but maybe I'll rename it. Then we've got some names for our next couple of tiers. We got the $5 money lender tier coming in with Clay Wambacher, Greg Sealby, Frank Teelgard Mortensen, and Mike Knowles. And then we have the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier. Peter Gardot, Ian DeRosier, Mark Roback, and Anton Glaving. And then still the $1 made-up name tier. Els Murders, Spacey Noodles, the Frightening Leaky Mausoleum, and Michael Veda. Impressive. Thank you very much for your donations. And, if you don't like Patreon, if you want to do PayPal, I was like, people were like, people don't like PayPal. They don't like Patreon. People don't know how to use it and they don't like it. So I was like, okay, well, I'll create a PayPal thing. It's just been crickets. Nobody is using PayPal. Everyone's going through Patreon. So
Okay.
that's great. But yeah, if you want PayPal, it's there for you. We just want to make sure we're available to everybody. And then thanks to our brothers at the Deep Dive Podcast Network, Riot Sabbath Bloody Podcast, The Simple Man at Skinner Reconsidered, and Terry T-Bone Mathley at T-Bone's Prime Cuts. And of course, the patron saint and archivist of the Deep Purple Podcast, Mr. Jörg Planer. Thank you so much for your support and information, as always, supporting the show. All right, so today we are coming at you with a great little nugget in the Deep Purple family, and that is James Gang's first album with Tommy Bolin called Bang.
Yeah, another Tommy episode.
Yeah, but
Get ready.
before we get to that, I think we got a sponsor here. Let me see if I can find our sponsor for this week. We've been really rich with sponsorships, and why should this week be any different? This week we have a sponsor, and that is, let me see who it is here. All right, here we go. This is going to be something during this quarantine, something you can really just kind of take your mind off of what's going on in the world today. Here you go.
I can't get enough of you, baby. I can't get enough of you, baby. Yes, it's true. Baby, yes, it's true. I can't get enough of you, baby.
So that's apparently an ad for the X-Files. I don't know if it's
Okay.
when they came on syndication or something, but that's JLT doing his best. What is that, Smash Mouth?
I think so.
I mean, it sounds right.
I don't know.
Doing his best Smash Mouth impression. Yeah, that's a weird one. We're getting to the bottom of the JLT barrel here. So yeah, check out X-Files. I'm sure it's on somewhere.
Oh my God.
Oh, thank you so much, JLT. I think we need more information on that one. If you have more information on what that one is about, we're getting to the kind of bottom of the barrel where I'm like, I don't even know what some of the stuff is, but it's apparently JLT funneling his inner, whatever that guy from Smash Mouth's name is. All right, so James Gang. So if you know anything about James Gang, you probably know what? Funk 49, right? Great song. That's from their Joe Walsh days, and that's what I was in a band. I'm sure everyone was in a band that covered Funk 49 at some point. So they had Joe Walsh with them for a few albums. Joe Walsh left, and a guy named Dominic Troiano took his place, and he was with them for a couple years, and a couple of albums, I should say. And then Tommy Bolin takes over. So previous to Tommy being in there, they were a power trio. Joe Walsh played guitar and vocals, and they had, prior to Joe Walsh joining, they had somebody named Phil Gialombardo on keys and vocals with a slight overlap, but I don't think they did any album stuff. I think the first album comes out is Joe Walsh, Tom Chris on bass, and then Jim Fox, the drummer, who's I think the only member that was with the band through their entire career. And Tom Chris ends up leaving. Dale Peters joins on bass, and Joe Walsh leaves to join the Eagles, and they end up hiring Dominic Troiano, as I said, and Roy Kenner to take over guitar and bass vocals. Both of them had been part of this Canadian band called Bush, not the Bush that you're familiar with from the 90s. I'm not familiar with the Canadian band Bush, or but I'm going to assume they were better than the Bush from the 90s. Sound unheard. I'm going to go with the Canadian one. So they do 2 albums with Troiano, and then Jim Fox, the drummer, says basically they weren't really happy with the direction that the band was going, that they said that Troiano was a really great guitar player, but he never really clicked with the James gang. And Walsh was still kind of friendly with the band, and he recommends Tommy Bolin. I guess they had heard him with Zephyr, and they discovered the Spectrum album, which seems to be kind of a lot of people's gateway into Bolin. And they said Dominic Troiano was a great player. He had a strong R&B style, but the others felt that didn't really work well with the band. He said he could play rock if he had to, but it wasn't kind of in his DNA to kind of be a rock player. So their road manager, a nice French Canadian by the name of Roland Paquin, he picked up Tommy from the airport when he was going to audition, and basically he was familiar with the band and what they were looking for, and he knew that they weren't happy with Troiano's rhythm and blues playing. So what does he do? He tells Tommy, "Hey, listen, if you want this job, you have to tell them how important R&B is to you, and tell them your favorite artist is Al Green." So Tommy goes in, and he's like, "Oh man, I just love R&B, and Al Green's my favorite," and everyone's just like, "What the hell is going on?"
I love it.
They said that basically their jaws hit the floor because it's not what they were expecting, and they all had a good laugh at it. But it doesn't sound like Tommy was in on the joke. It sounds like Tommy was just like, "I need this job, so I'm gonna lie.
I'll say whatever I have to say." Yeah. Who wouldn't, with that inside info? I've done the same thing for jobs. Tell me what to say. What do they want to hear?
What do they want to hear? This is what I'm going to deliver. So they said basically the difference was Troiano could play anything, but his heart wasn't really in rock. He'd just play it. He'd play it if it was requested, but it wasn't really in his DNA. But he said Tommy could also play anything, but he could play it and mean it. He wasn't just going through the motions. But everything I've heard about Troiano is that he's a great player, and I'm not really familiar with much of his work or the previous James Gang stuff. That era between Walsh and Bolin, I am admittedly pretty ignorant about. But they would have had the same singer during that period as well. So, and that would have been Roy Kenner. So again, he was in this band Bush with Troiano, and he ends up staying on through the 2 albums with Bolin. And then on bass, you've got Dale Peters. So he ends up going on to a career after James Gang, working with mostly in production and engineering, working with George Thorogood, the Cars, and surprisingly, Enough's Enough. On the drums, Jim Fox, he did work a little bit with Joe Walsh and the Doobie Brothers apart from this, but he's been kind of the backbone. And James Gang is one of those groups that pops up every few years. They do like a little reunion thing with Joe Walsh for a little bit. So they're still kind of, who knows, they might get together a couple more times. Obviously, we know Tommy Bolin. And then, like I said, Roy Kenner, he had a scattering of credits after James Gang, but not a ton. And then apart from that on this album from instrumentation, there's Jim Haskell, who did the string arrangements, and he's got thousands of entries on Discogs going back to the 50s, working with B.B. King, Simon and Garfunkel, Mama Cass, and a bunch of other, I mean, pretty much everyone you could imagine. He's probably just a studio guy they called in, and he could just bang out an arrangement perfectly really quick. And that brings us to some interesting stuff, being the album art. So here's the album cover. This is a great one. So how would you describe this album cover?
I always enjoyed it. It always made me think of like, I don't know, the Southwest or something like that.
Yeah, there's like a kind of cowboy theme to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like they're somewhere in like Arizona or something like that.
And like a saloon. It's kind of like it's got a saloon style vibe to it.
Yeah, but it's pretty like, I guess, I don't know, it's fun, goofy.
So you've got and I'm not familiar enough with quite the looks of them. So they're on a bed. There's like I don't know, a 6-barrel shotgun pointing at you that's lying on the bed, and you've got a woman who in the old Western movies would have been a lady of the night working at the saloon, and they're all on the bed with her, kind of like surrounding her. One, I love the guy that's in the long, like the long johns that you'd see in like the Western movies that they'd wear, the one-piece pajamas. He's got like the weird
Yeah.
rainbow socks on.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good. And then of course the interesting thing about this album cover, and I guess actually looking at this, it looks like, so the guy up top with the hat on would be Dale Peters, right? Yeah, that would be Dale Peters. And then you've got Tommy Bolin, obviously all the way on the right. On the bottom, it looks like you've got Jim Fox and then Roy Kenner on the left, or it might be the other way around.
I only know who Tommy Bolin is. So out of all these people, I don't know who any of the band members are. The little horse, the broad, the lady of the night, whoever she is. And they're all like reading a picture book. I'm assuming from like the guy in the long johns, it's probably like filthy picture book.
I think it's like some lewd drawings.
Yeah, because his face is like.
There's some sketches I have that are a little off color.
Like he's just kind of like raunchy about it, and Tommy Bolin is just like, whoa. And he's liking it, and everybody, and the guy up top he's just kind of like, geez. He doesn't even care about it. He's the only one. Him and the horse.
So the interesting thing about this album cover is, if you look closely, you can kind of notice, although it's pretty well done for the time, is that Tommy Bolin's head is superimposed over somebody else's body. And I tried to dig around to find a little bit more information about what this comes from. But it's odd to me that, so basically this photo was taken with Dominic Troiano in the photo, and then they just basically were like, oh, we got Tommy Bolin now, so they popped his head on top of his body.
You know what? I can totally see it now that you said it. Like
you can see it
and everything.
It's kind of sticking out a little bit.
Yeah, that the hat looks like it was like cut and pasted on there, and like the hair and everything, like the arm and the body. You can totally see it.
Yeah, but it's pretty well done. Like you wouldn't necessarily notice. It doesn't jump out at you unless you know. So,
nope.
So the thing that I'm unclear about, and I did a little bit of research and talked to a few people, but I couldn't really figure out, why did they have this? I mean, maybe this picture was just taken for some other purpose. They decided it would make a good album cover, and that's why they pasted his head over it. And they basically said they couldn't reshoot it because all these props had been like thrown away, or they didn't have them anymore. So that's why they did it. That's why they went for the cheap kind of superimposed Tommy Bolin head on top.
Wow.
But it's very difficult. I could show you. So basically, the only picture I could find of the original album cover is this one. And it's very low quality, but it shows you a side by side of the original album cover with the real album cover, and you can see how the other guitar player is in it, and how it's got a different. It says James Gang Bang on it, so which is why it's a little weird. So it's like he didn't do anything for this album, so that's why I don't. And maybe I'm sure if somebody out there is listening and saying, "You morons, how do you not know this story?" Please let us know. Why is it that it happened this way? Because that would be really interesting to know. Now, I was definitely had a huge flashback this week preparing for this episode. So I get on Google and I start to image search James Gang Bang. So think about those words together. James Gang Bang.
I'm sure that turned up a lot of interesting things, probably in that little amusing sketchbook that they were looking at on the album cover.
It could have been some of those photos. So, and I was instantly transported to the early 90s using like whatever Alta Vista, searching about this album when we were first really getting into it, and having the same results. So
Wow.
as great as Google is, it really hasn't propelled anything forward. It's the same. It's very, I found there's certain older things that are very hard to Google or search for based on their title, and this is one of them. But this is unique in that it brings up a lot of, it'll be a lot of stuff about the James Gang album, and mixed in there just completely randomly some stuff that you maybe not wanting to see at that moment, or maybe you are. So yeah, so that's the best example I could find of that, and I tried to look everywhere to see if somebody had a higher quality version of that cover, and no luck. Then we've got the back cover of the album, which is pretty low key. It's just like a little picture of a moon and some stars. It's got the track listing, who wrote what songs, pretty standard stuff. And then the little insert for the record itself looks like it's got like almost a watermark that says "Bang" with the stars, and it has the lyrics. And there's the record itself. So
Nice Italian colors for Atlantic Records.
I know, right?
Oh, we're Atlantic
Hey.
Records over here.
Oh,
Vanabala.
you know what goes good with this record? A nice gabagool. So for this album cover, the art direction and design were done by David Larkham, who did like apparently like every Elton John album that I could find, and some Van Morrison and some other stuff. And then Ed Carafe, which I might be mispronouncing. He worked on album covers, a lot of album covers for Zappa, Tim Buckley, Bread, various stuff like that. Yeah, so that's the album cover, engineered by Ken Hammond, who did engineering for Grand Funk Railroad, and then some jazz stuff too, Dizzy Gillespie and Oscar Peterson. So that's the kind of the credits for the album. And like I said, not a ton of information on this album out there. I'll put some links in the show notes. So some great interviews with Jim Fox, and I'm trying to get some more information on it even after this episode, but that's all I've got for now. All right, we ready to kick it off with some of these tracks?
Yeah, it's been a hot minute since I've listened to this album. So
yeah, without giving too much away, there's one song on this album that I listen to regularly, probably at least once a month for the past 25 years. But other than that, the rest of I've listened to the album periodically as well. But there's one standout on this album to me that I listen to a lot, but I don't want to give too much away. So let's kick it off with the first track on the album, which is called "Standing in the Rain."
obvious Tommy right there.
Yeah, if you're used to Funk 49, this is probably not what you were expecting. That might have been Tommy's Echoplex that we've heard about before.
Yeah, well, he used that in the solo and Coming Home on Come Taste the Band. It's a really cool effect that I've only heard him use, at least to that effect.
And this song was written by Tommy Bolin solo. And it's not surprising if you know Tommy Bolin's style.
Really catchy. It's really catchy, really hooky.
Yeah, this song has always struck me as being a pretty strong album opener, and another one where you just scratch your head and say, why wasn't this played on classic rock radio all the time? Great track.
Yeah, I mean, good production too. I like the sound of the guitars. I like the vocals too. Who's the vocalist?
Roy Kenner.
He's almost kind of got a Tommy Bolin-ish quality about his vocals for this song. Like, Tommy could have sang this too.
Oh, right. And you wonder, like, had he heard Tommy Bolin singing this because Tommy Bolin wrote it and he was emulating Tommy Bolin? Or...
yeah, possible.
That does happen sometimes. Classic Tommy.
I love it.
Never misses an opportunity.
A really cool bass groove going on back there.
Yeah, really nice.
What year was this?
This would have been 73.
Well, I mean, yeah, it was before Come Taste the Band, so...
yeah.
73, 74?
73, yeah, because I think Miami was 74.
It's got a really, I don't know, almost like a later 70s sound to the production.
Yeah, because 73 is pretty early.
Yeah, almost like slick for a 70s production, which is different than slick 80s production.
But this song would not be out of place on like Teaser or Private Eyes or something.
Nope, not at all. Maybe even Come Taste the Band.
Oh, yeah.
You picture like Glenn Hughes singing this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. You'd go crazy on this song.
Oh, then we're like...
quite as restrained as Roy Kenner.
Could you hear Glenn Hughes singing this? And then we always laugh like, oh, yeah, he'd be going nuts with this.
I can imagine it. And before we get into the ratings, it's worth noting something that's really fascinated me that I didn't really think much of until we started doing this show. And if you look at the songwriting credits on this album, you've got Tommy Bolin on 8 of 9 tracks as a either solo songwriter or co-writer, and largely without. He co-wrote one song with Roy Kenner. He wrote one by himself, and then the others are written with John Tessar and Jeff Cook. And then Roy Kenner wrote one song on this album. So once again, you see this situation where Tommy Bolin's brought into a band and completely takes it over. He
I was
obviously
gonna say, yeah.
he gets ton of credit as being this great guitar player, but apart from that, his songwriting is just, he's on fire when he joins these bands.
Obviously a good songwriter, which kind of makes you think too, like when we listen to Teaser, how that didn't seem to be as strong of a showing for him, like when he was on his own. But when he joins the other band, like at least what we've heard so far, like when he's in the other bands in this situation, he comes up with some really good stuff that we like more. Like maybe, because he wrote the songs, but I mean he was being, he's probably being collaborative with the other musicians as well. And maybe in that situation, obviously he was, a great songwriter as well as musician, which I mean, you see that a lot too. A lot of like great musicians or guitar players, mostly in rock. They're great working with other people. And then when they're, as we always say, left to their own devices, not as strong. Still good, but not as.
When Tommy Bolin left to his own devices, wasn't, well, I think and before
I'm not
anyone
saying bad.
Oh, right. Before anyone gets crazy listening to this, we love Teaser. Our main complaint about it was that it seemed a little disjointed because you've got this rotating cast of people through every song. And from my memory, Private Eyes is a little more cohesive because he had more of a solid band. And when you get to something like this, it's another situation where he's got a consistent band throughout the entire album, but he takes it over. So it's like you got to wonder, like, what would this band have done had Tommy Bolin not come in? Like the only thing they anyone apart from Tommy Bolin contributed is one song. So he was just really good at cranking out these great songs really quickly. And we even talked about it on Come Taste the Band, like that album might as well have been Tommy Bolin featuring Deep Purple. It was all Coverdale and Bolin over that entire album pretty much. But anyway, that's Standing in the Rain. What would you give that as a ranking?
4. I think it's a strong opening track, and I always liked it. I always liked the groove. I always thought, like you said, it's like a great rocker. Like, how could this have not been part of classic rock radio? One of those type of songs.
Yep, I agree 100%. But these formulas are not agreeing with me, so let me just do a little something real quick here. There we go. Yeah, I give it a 4 as well. I think it's there we go. I'll give it a 4 as well. I love the vibe it creates for when you hear that first beginning of the song is like really weird, that like and like, what is going on here? And this is not what you're expecting to have follow that. It sounds more like he's doing a track for Alphonse Mouzon or something at that point. It's like almost he forgot, like, wait, who we're recording with today? Is Alphonse? Oh, and then they told him halfway through, no, this is the James Gang album. Oh, okay.
But I mean, if you're a Tommy Bolin fan, like I'm pretty sure that by the time I heard this, I had already heard Come Taste the Band and his other stuff. So it's like, if you're a Tommy fan, then when you hear that stuff at the beginning, it's not a surprise that it probably goes into this, because you're just like, all right. But if you're not a Tommy fan or you're a James Gang fan, you're probably like what you were saying is like, all right, what is this weird, like string raking, echoey stuff that's going on here? Like, what kind of crazy Captain Beyond type stuff am I going to be in for now?
Well, I remember you had the Tommy Bolin the Ultimate, and then you had that documentary on VHS, and we had watched it one night, and then we went to, was it that big like Strawberries on Route 2 in Warwick that was like 2 floors?
2 or 3 floors. Did we go to that one?
We went to that one. That's where I bought the Tommy Bolin the Ultimate, my 2 CD set. I think you had the 2 cassette set because I think you weren't sold on CDs yet at that point.
I still have the box set back here. It's
like, I have it somewhere, but I just don't know where it is. But well, I got that, and then basically I listened to that a few times, and I was like, okay, this isn't even really for me to listen to. This is just a checklist of all the albums I need to get. So I looked at it, as like James Gang Miami, Alphonse Mouzon, Billy Cobham, Come Taste the Band, which I probably already had at that point. But basically every album represented on that set I got within weeks, and then just had all of it, Moxie, all that stuff, and just listened to it all on constant replay, all the Zephyr albums, just because um, it was so good, and it struck me so much initially that I had to have it all immediately, and so glad that I did.
Yeah. I mean, really, back in the day, box sets, like that was probably one of the only box sets that I bought, at least in the early days. I had that one, and there was an Eric Clapton one that I really loved. But it was the same type of thing. It's like as soon as I heard these, like there was like one song off this one, so I was like, okay, like this is the list of like albums that I got to go buy,
Yep.
which not all of them were up to my expectation, because as you know, like there could be like one great song that they pull from an album, and that could be like not representative of like how, let's say for this, how rockin' the whole album is. So like when I finally heard like the Billy Cobham album, I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of like a little too avant-garde for my tastes, whereas, when I heard like this, it was a little more in line with what I enjoyed. But yeah, box sets were like almost like a great advertisement. It
Yeah.
still are, although you can, more easily get stuff, but when we couldn't get stuff that easy, they were a great advertisement for like an artist's career.
Well, I felt like this was the first time there was an artist in the Deep Purple vein where we could find this stuff, because most of the stuff was UK or Japanese import stuff, and you had some of that with Tommy Bolin, but for the most part, these were readily available to you if you wanted to find them in the United States. You
Yeah, to
didn't
think
have to
about it, it's
go,
kind of weird.
you didn't have to do some mail order thing and wait 8 weeks to get it from the UK, or hope your parents were going on vacation to Europe so they could pop in a Tower Records in London and buy something for you. So it was really great for me to discover that. I've never been like a big greatest hits fan. It's like I wanted the original album and hear what it is. And like you said, sometimes you're like, well, I guess they picked the one good song off of that album. But for the most part, I really enjoyed listening to these complete albums.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, even if you think about it, like back when did this box set come out? It was like probably the 90s, right?
I think it was, that's a good question, 89 or 90 or something.
Well, whenever it came out, I mean, if you think about it, like having a whole box set devoted to Tommy Bolin, like back then, seems kind of like unusual because he wasn't like really mainstream at all.
No. It's kind
Um,
of,
so it's kind of cool that I don't even know how I must have just, I can't even remember how I used to find things. I must have just seen it and just been like, whoa, and grabbed it, because I remember it was all pink.
yeah, it's just like in that pink fog with his arm raised.
Yeah, really
It's
cool cover to that box set.
very cool. But I'm foggy on what my first introduction to Bolin was or any of this stuff.
Well, I know
But
mine was definitely like through Purple.
it must have been the same for me. I must have gotten it in. I must have seen that box set with you and just been like, oh, we got to go and get one for me now.
But but I mean, that's how I got into Deep Purple to begin with, because when I was like, okay, I want to get into them, I bought the greatest hits, because that's really, if you think about it, the cheapest way to get the most songs that span a certain period of time. So that was the Deepest Purple, which was when I thought the band was always Ian Gillan on vocals. So I was just like, wow, he's really singing different here on Burn. Like, what? How's he doing that? Like, that's really weird. But I mean, it really wasn't a stretch, because like when I heard Demon's Eye, it's like found out later on, like, okay, that's Mark II. But the vocals at the time sounded really different than the other stuff he was doing. So I'm just like, why does he sound so weird on Demon's Eye? You know what I mean? I mean, now it sounds more like him because I know his different, kind of range that he was using. But I just remember thinking like the whole lineup was like Mark II. So I heard like Stormbringer and all that stuff, and the Come Taste the Band stuff. I'm like, wow, these guys are like amazing. Like, well, listen to all the styles they do.
Yeah, and it was a different. You weren't, not to get into old fogey territory here, but you didn't have like you could just whip out your cell phone and be like, oh, let me go to Discogs or whatever and look at what the or
Mhm.
Wikipedia and look at this album and who's the lineup. You just were like,
Yeah.
you know, you'd listen to something 100 times and be like, oh, I didn't realize they had a different guitar player for that or whatever it was.
Mhm.
Anyway, so great opening track. Next song up on side 1 of the LP is a song called "The Devil Is Singing Our Song." This one is written by John Tessar and Tommy Bolin. A nice little swampy sort of low groove going on here.
Mhm.
That riff almost sounds like it could be like
Sabbath.
Deep Purple, I was thinking. Sabbath too, yeah. But I was thinking like more like, it sounds almost like the Love Child riff in that chorus.
Okay. I was thinking that, like, if you think about it, it's kind of like almost like a Planet Caravan
yeah,
vibe.
yeah. I'm hearing that now, yeah.
Like that kind of Sabbath. No, vocalist definitely has a delivery that's like pretty distinctive. He says the devil. The devil. He says the devil.
Well, he's Canadian, so. Yeah, the dabble. Dabbling in the dabble. See, that is the Love Child riff.
Oh, why it is.
I never connected that before.
Love Child, the prequel.
Exactly. Oh, and I love how he does these guitar solos that are panning left and right.
You know, I like this guitar solo wasn't that long, but what I've noticed already is that in the solo sections, he's not doing like this strong rhythm guitar. It's like they're really letting the bass kind of fill in the background and just do a lot of cool stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I can hear Hughesy on some of these tracks for sure.
Which shows you that on his own, Tommy was pretty funky.
Damn funky, you'd say.
Damn funky. Hey, so far on the album, this production is pretty good. Vocalist is pretty good. I'd say he's not outstanding, but he's good.
I think he suits the music great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does have a kind of a Rod Evans growl when he brings it out.
Here it comes. Shout out to Nick at Pot of Thunder. It's our inside joke. Here it comes. I mean, right now you've got Tommy Bolin, who's a great talent, great guitar player, and he's pretty restrained. He's not really going all over the place. He's playing for the song. He's not trying to be show-offy or anything like that. He's just playing some really solid guitar.
I feel like he always delivered that way. He was never like, to me, struck me as the kind of guy. I mean, he obviously could play like nobody's business, but he wasn't somebody that was going to try to steal the spotlight. He was always, he always was very tasteful in what he did.
Well, I would say if you think about like maybe the first few songs on Come Taste the Band, he was really, let's not even say showing off, like really letting loose,
Yeah.
like really letting rip, you know. And I know it's a different album, different group of musicians, but on this, it seems to be really just really kind of restrained, laid back. Like that's the vibe that I get from this album is like, you know how we talk about they're really like kind of like ripping rock and roll albums. And then there are the ones that are just kind of more mellow and laid back. And this one is giving me the more laid back vibe.
Mm-hmm.
So I like it. Yeah. So
Okay,
far it's good stuff.
All right. How would you rank The Devil is Singing Our Song? The Davil is singing our song.
The Devil. I give it a 3.5. I thought it was good, but you know, nothing too memorable about it.
I'll match you with a 3.5. I really like the groove of it.
Mhm.
I think it's great. It was really
Oh
good.
yeah, good song. Just yeah.
All right, next up we have a track, Must Be Love. This one's written by Jeff Cook and Tommy Bolin.
Little acoustic, a little slide. I love it every time we hear that. You're like,
oh yeah.
you can hear Glenn Hughes singing this.
And I always think, listening to this now, I think when I listen to this, I always assumed this was a cover. It just seems like a song that would have been around already, you know?
I'm sure that there were elements of it that were, you know, if we thought about it long enough, we'd figure it out, but it has elements of probably past songs that have this kind of like,
yeah, like a song from the
it.
from the 60s or something, like some pop song from the 60s. It just sounds so, it has such a familiar sound to it. That is great. He brings out like an Elvis impression.
I like that. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm forgetting about this, but my tongue talk. It just got that kind of silly energy to it that I think that's why I always associated it with a song that must have already been around.
I feel some classic Tommy coming on.
This I could see Mark IV playing too. This part, not the other part. But so far, this album has like this feeling that everyone's really into it, like having a good time, you know?
Yeah. You know what kind of reminds me of this is like the Poison's version of Your Mama Don't Dance.
Yeah. Good call. Maybe that's why I kind of associated it with being a being a throwback or something.
Yeah, because you got the, you know, your mama don't dance, but your daddy don't rock and roll. Which I mean, I think
Or
that
like
song,
smoking in the boys' room too. You know,
yeah, it could,
kind of like
yeah,
a more of a rock band covering a song from the 50s or 60s.
yeah. Although I think I don't know offhand, but I think "Smoking in the Boys' Room" and "Your Mama Don't Dance" were those like around this time. I think "Smoking in the Boys' Room" might have been 70s, but your mama 60s, but "Your Mama Don't Dance" I think was 70s, early 70s.
Oh yeah, it says "Smoking in the Boys' Room," 1973.
Oh, okay.
The artist was Brownsville Station. The album was called "Yeah." I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good call.
But yeah,
I don't think I've
feel
ever
like,
heard the original. I just always knew it was a cover.
but I think that those might have been kind of the songs that we were thinking of. So maybe this was almost them writing a contemporary version of something that was already happening. Or either way, it's like, you know, you obviously you got very distinctive Tommy type sections in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really good stuff. And like you said, it sounded like they were having fun doing it, especially with like the vocal parts too, and everything, doing the different.
Must be crazy.
Yeah, that kind of like having fun with that 50s crooner type of thing, which at that time was like, you know, retro for them only by like, you know, 15 or 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
So
What do you say about "Must Be Love"?
um I'm like 3.5. Again, good, but I think just average good for me.
I'll give it a 3.52. I think I would give it a 3 if it wasn't for the kind of those cool little vocal things they did, and that little funky bridge in the middle really brought it up. I think other than that, it would have been kind of almost a filler track.
Yeah, I feel like the past couple of songs, like if Tommy wasn't on them, like if there was a different guitar player, it might have lost some of that flavor, because obviously we can pick out like, oh, he did that type of thing on "Come Taste the Band," or oh, that sounds like a Tommy kind of like lick right there. Or
All right.
yeah.
The next track is the final track on side 1, and this is written by Jeff Cook and Tommy Bolin, but Tommy Bolin takes over lead vocals on this one, and the only one on the album that he does, and this one's called "Alexis."
Alexis, thank you for pleasant southern days spent on the levee.
Nice little bass line going in there too.
Yeah, the song's great.
And talking other rich folks on the big boats that pass that way. You were just a young girl, and I just could not stay.
Keeping that whole laid back vibe of the album. I always remember thinking this was a kind of a companion track to Savannah Woman a little bit.
Yeah. It reminds me of that same feeling.
Yeah, kind of the same family of songs.
This has a kind of tropical feel to me. It makes me feel like I'm on a beach with a refreshing drink.
Yeah, it's probably the same thing with Savannah Woman. Well, that being said, this could have been on one of his solo albums.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, really cool laid back vibe, good bass, good vocals by Tommy. I always liked there was like a story behind the lyrics too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, I've never been a big one for listening to lyrics or anything, but
I love
always
right
knew
here.
that
And
there was
listen
that.
to what he does in the guitar in the verse here.
Wanna leave you there. Sometimes this life
Those little swells in. Like on the first verse, it's very stark, and then here he starts to layer in a little, some guitar fills.
with me, but I did not dare. You were just a young girl, and I couldn't pay your fare. Alexis always used to talk about leaving your hometown, heading all south. Maybe down to New
Maybe it's kind of the beat or the time signature he's using that's kind of like very, gives it that kind of like tropical-y feeling.
Yeah.
Because you know he was all about that.
But had my doubt. Had my doubt.
And then I love this where it starts to build up to
This
that, like, you know,
build at the end is incredible.
that kind of crescendo, you know, that kind of like, you know, blind men type of like crescendo to a song. Love when a song does this.
This is one that I think I just can't. I can't believe this wasn't like an instant hit.
Yep.
His guitar playing is absolutely out of control on this.
And I was just saying before too that he hasn't really let loose yet. Well, this is the song where he does.
Yep. And that, my friends, is how you close out a side of an album.
Oh yeah. Was this one of the ones on the box set? I can't remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
This one definitely really stuck out to me.
Yeah, that's probably why I like it.
Yeah. All right. Alexis. All right. What do you think about Alexis?
4.5 for me. I think it's a great song. It falls under another one of those why wasn't this a classic? Considered a classic, mainstream.
All right. Well, I'm kicking it all the way up to 5 for this one. This is definitely the standout for me. It's something that I come to all the time. It's a great song. Like you said, I can't get over the fact that this wasn't like a huge hit, or that somebody has not. And apparently Jeff Cook has been on the record multiple times wondering why somebody has not redone this song. I was trying to look for it in my messages, and I apologize to whoever told me this, and I'm probably going to butcher the story, but apparently, you know, this story is, he says, you know, going to go down to New Orleans and everything. And apparently, I might get this wrong and I forget who told me, and I'm sorry, but they said that Jeff Cook went to New Orleans and ended up meeting his wife in New Orleans, and they had a daughter, and he named her Alexis. So kind of a cool coda to the story. But yeah, I mean, it's beautifully done. It's got the word hobo in it, and who doesn't like a song with the word hobo in it?
Well, apparently Coverdale when he redid Here I Go Again.
Well, the way he says it too is, I was just a hobo. Hobo is not a word that was bandied about very much. I I swear the first time I heard this, I thought he said homo. And I was just a homo. And I was like, what the heck? It was like so weird because it's a sweet, like really nice, sweet song. And then it's just like he throws that. And I'm like, what?
It was the 70s. He was experimenting.
Yeah. And but I thought it was kind of, I was like, is this like a song about how he's met this woman, Alexis, and he thought, he's confused about like his sexuality. I'm like, what's going on here? And I was like,
That's a different take.
Yeah. I was like, very different. I was like, oh, hobo. Okay. But hobo didn't make a lot more sense. But I was like, but that would have been a very progressive take for 1973, right? To just be like,
for a rock guy to come out and be like, I don't know, maybe I like this woman, maybe I like this guy instead. I don't know.
Well, that's why I thought like if it was like a guy who was with a woman and was questioning his sexuality, I thought for the 70s that would, because there's like Rush has a song about that even, I think. But to do it the other way, to like be like to be having your sexuality be like, or to be identifying as homosexual but questioning that, oh, maybe I'm not because I met this Alexis. I thought that was just such a like, wow, like such a progressive take. But no, he's just talking about being a hobo, so there you go.
That all went out all that analysis out the window.
I know, right? As I didn't have the lyrics sheet, and what are you gonna do? All right, so yeah, I give it a 5 again. I can't say enough good things about this song. It's one of my all-time favorite tracks, and I hope I kind of hope somebody redoes it one day. Although it'd be a hard one to really nail. I think the main part of the song could easily be redone and done really well, but that outro is so Tommy Bolin. Like, what do you do about that outro without either you copy what he does exactly or you do something completely different? But that just it's such a it sounds like a classic. It sounds like something that did get played on classic rock radio. Maybe it's good it didn't, because I'd be sick of it if it had. All right. We're going to flip this LP over. Oh, there we go. Put it on the turntable here. That was a heavy one.
How heavy is your record?
Very heavy one. This is like the gold remastered version. That's why. And this side of the album begins with a song, the only song that Tommy Bolin co-wrote with a member of the band, with Roy Kenner. And this one's called Ride the Wind. Another like classic rock groove right here. I gotta say, I really like what Dale Peters is doing on the bass here.
Interesting stuff going on there.
I love that little synth line. And that was played by Tommy, I think.
When I first heard the lyrics, I thought he said it's a great life if you're Norwegian.
Aren't they one of Aren't they one of the happiest countries, though? Maybe it is.
Yeah. This seems to be the album of misheard lyrics for us. Like, it's a great life if you're Norwegian.
Well, sorry.
I think it was that funny.
That's real. Oh man.
What does he actually say?
He says,
What does he actually say?
it's a great life if you don't weaken.
Oh, okay.
I like your line better.
I can tell. Oh. Oh.
It's a it really sounded like Jonathan Seagull there. He has this line, I want to be like Jonathan Seagull. And I thought, who's Jonathan Seagull? And I looked up the lyrics and it's Jonathan Seagull. Like a bird.
Oh. You're not going to be able to unhear that now.
No, that's for the rest of my life. It's done.
But not to take away from the cool stuff in the song though. There is some cool, like the synth in here is pretty good.
And it's kind of got that like muddy low end sound to it. That's really cool.
And of course, his like lead guitar sound. It's one of my favorite lead guitar sounds of his. It's a really echoey, like, you know, delay, like soaked in like delay. And like chorus and reverb and whatever else he had on it.
Yeah, he was always doing so much cool stuff with different playing around with different effects. So just another note about the lyrics. So that confused me. Like, I want to be like Jonathan Seagull. So I was thinking like Steven Seagal type spelling, but it's Seagull. And I looked it up, and it's a book called Jonathan Livingston Seagull, written by Richard Bach and illustrated by Russell Munson, is a fable in novella form about a seagull who is trying to learn about life in flight, and a homily about self-perfection. And it came out in 1970, so it would have been kind of new around that time. So maybe he had read it, and he's like, I want to be Norwegian, and I want to be like Jonathan Seagull.
Very topical.
Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I'll have to do a special bonus episode on that book. Yeah. So what do you think about Ride the Wind?
Ride the Wind. I think just a 3 for me. I think that it was it's an average track. I want to take away from all the funny stuff that we were saying though, but it definitely was what I was hearing through the track is that I liked the synth parts that were going in the I think it was the bridge,
mm-hmm.
and then the chorus as well. I thought that really was great for the song, and I also liked the tone on his guitar, the rhythm guitar before he went into the solo. That stuck out to me too.
The part was like dun 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 dun.
Yeah, it was really just like really clean, and like I don't know, it was just really just unmistakably Tommy Bolin. He just got a lot of like aside from his playing, he just had a lot of great like guitar tones that I really liked that he used.
I'm gonna go with 3.5. I liked all the little flourishes in there. I think it could, this song could have been a very boring song if it wasn't for like that cool synth thing. I think the vocals were very strong, and all the little guitar work that he did to spice up the song. It just made it really interesting and fun to listen to. And I really do like that part where he says, yeah, unfortunately now it's funny to me, but it's a great life if you don't weaken. It's a great life if you don't weaken. And then with the synth. I think it's a great little transition.
Yeah.
Really, really cool track. All right. Well, next up, I ain't got no time for trouble, and neither does the James Gang. Got no time for trouble. Oops, I forgot how to do this. And this was written by John Tessar and Tommy Bolin.
Take your empty-headed stand and give it to the stars. Take a lean and hungry look. Take your lonely heart.
Kind of gives me like I'm Your Captain vibes from Grand Funk.
Yeah.
I don't think that you'll go under. You're just trying to raise some thunder. Ain't got no time for trouble. I got plenty of my own. Ain't got no time for trouble.
Yeah, and then it's like that kind of like early 70s laid back rocker.
Yeah.
All you do is sit.
This whole album, I feel like you were saying about that other song, you could just like, you could listen to it like on a beach or driving around on a sunny day or by the pool or something like that. Like this just like to me screams like just kind of a cool laid back album that you're like hanging out like in the nice weather
Yeah.
or in the summer. I definitely have those albums that give me those vibes, that are ones that I specifically like to put on and listen to like when it's around this time of year or in a month or two from now.
You're just trying to raise some thunder. Ain't got no time for trouble. I got plenty of my own. Ain't got no time for trouble. I got plenty of my own. Ain't got no time for trouble. All you do is sit and moan.
He has this one line in here. It says, I could buoy you up. Like, buoy you up.
Mm-hmm.
But in parentheses, it says pull. So I missed it. I don't know if he actually said. I don't know if the parentheses is in there to tell you what buoy means, in case you don't know. Some of these lyric sites are not always the greatest. It's kind of a weird thing. And he goes to an acoustic solo after this.
Nice. That was really nice.
Got no time for trouble. No time for trouble.
Tommy doing the hard wah-wah guitar there. He didn't do a lot of wah-wah guitar, did he?
Definitely is on this album, but
Well, that's why it stands out. I don't think I heard him do a lot of wah pedal. No, it's good though. I like it.
yeah. Very nice. All right, you got no time for trouble.
What I like about this album and these songs too is that it's there's like a lot of different like stuff in there. You know what I mean? Like every song, it's just like, okay, what kind of like, I wonder what kind of like effect or sound or like different kind of cool like flourish is going to get thrown in for this one. It's kind of, but it doesn't sound disjointed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of really great albums have a lot of that going on, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things that always appealed to me about the Beatles. They weren't just like laying down a verse and a chorus. There was always some weird thing, like they'll play a song and then like instead of ending with a certain line of lyric, they'll just be like, oh, we're gonna have a full brass band play for 4 bars. And you're like, well, where the hell did that come from? But it's those things that make it memorable and make it stick out in your mind and make you want to sing along. And the same thing with this. Like when I think of Alexis, it's always, coming out of that, coming right back into the verse is that little phrase he does, that like I always think of that, whereas you could have just strummed and gone into the verse and it would have been far less interesting.
Right.
All right, so how would you rank Got No Time for Trouble?
3.5.
All right.
Yeah, good song.
I will give it a 3. I agree. It's a very it's a good song. I enjoy it a lot, and it continues on the kind of vibe that we've got going on in this album and does it very well. Next up, we have Rather Be Alone With You, aka Song for Dale, which always kind of like, I always wondered, like, who the hell's Dale? And I actually tried to reach out to some people involved with this album to get an answer to that question, but I came up empty. I don't know who Dale is.
Maybe it was the the guy from the other song. You thought of the homo from the other song.
Oh, I thought you meant the Norwegian.
No, it could be. Yeah, it could be the Norwegian.
It doesn't
too.
sound like a very Norwegian name. Maybe if it was like the A with the little circle above it. I don't know what you call that, but song for Dale.
Song for Dial.
This movie out. This movie out. Did you ever see the movie Animal Olympics?
No.
It's this animated. Well, it's a cartoon from. I think it came out in 1980, and it's about all these animals doing the Olympics, and it's the voices are done by Harry Shearer, Billy Crystal, Gilda Radner, and a fourth guy who I always forget.
Wow.
And it's I grew up watching it as a kid. My older cousin had it, and it's this one thing we take it out like once a year for the kids to watch, and they love it. And there's this one scene where Billy Crystal's doing like a Norwegian accent. He's like, "When I was a little girl." It's just like the classic like early 80s like completely over the top offensive accent, and I just whenever I think of a Norwegian accent, I think of him. He's like a horse, and he's like a Norwegian horse. Oh, it's great. Anyway, Rather Be Alone With You, aka Song for Dale, aka. It's like,
also known as.
Is it actually known as anything? Like this album just came out, nobody knows. Oh, yeah.
Sister's coming over. She got something on her mind. I just don't understand it. We ain't never got the time. Now, you don't be nervous. If I seem upset, I can handle it then. Yeah, I'd rather be alone with you.
It's like a Bobby McFerrin type vibe going on. I love it. Forgot about this track.
I forgot about Bobby McFerrin.
I got your mama on the phone. What a sense of timing. We don't need to be alone. Hang a sign out telling everyone we'll be gone for quite a while. I'd rather be alone with you. I'd rather be alone with you.
Is this just him on vocals?
It might be just him multi-tracked.
Because I don't hear any Tommy on this.
It'd be great if he came in now.
I feel like this is just the lead vocalist multi-tracked.
Oh, I think it fades into the next song there.
Better
get a quick cut off. That's very cool. Like,
You don't hear that a lot.
What's that?
You don't hear that a lot on a rock album.
No, it's great. I mean, it breaks up things. It's smack in the middle of this side of the album, and it reminds me. I have this. I can't remember what the heck it's called, but it's all Bobby McFerrin live album, which is just absolutely astonishing. It's just him on stage with a microphone, nothing else, no effects, no looping pedals. It came out in the 80s, and the whole album sounds like that, even though it's just the one microphone and the one vocal. But he Bobby McFerrin, people know, Don't Worry, Be Happy. But if you aren't familiar with his other stuff, you got to check it out. He's absolutely it will bowl you over what he can do with just his voice. The Voice. That's what I think. I think his album was called The Voice, not like the show The Voice. But yeah, really, he opens it up with Blackbird by the Beatles, and he does like all these things, like he'll be singing and then he'll whistle like it in a sound like a bird, and then he does this thing where it's like and it sounds like wings flapping. It's just it's very weird because it's like a cross between who is Michael Winslow and actual like singing performance, but it's very very crazy. Is that what's called? The Voice? Yeah, Bobby McFerrin, The Voice. Great album. 1984. Wow, I didn't know it was that old.
Wow.
But yeah, I'd highly recommend it. He does a lot of really cool stuff. He goes, oh yeah, he does I Feel Good. He does Blackbird. He does some original stuff. Yeah, definitely check it out. Anyway, AKA Dale, what would you give this song?
So I guess if you don't feel like calling the song Rather Be Alone With You, you can be like, Song for Dale.
One of my favorite James Gang songs is Song for Dale.
Which one's that? Well, that's Rather Be Alone With You, but it's also known as the Song for Dale. So that's what I chose to call it today. Well, I got to say it's not, obviously I know that I've heard other Bobby McFerrin stuff just to talk about, since this is the kind of similar style that we're familiar with. I don't think that it's up to that level, but you definitely got to respect the guy for pulling this off, and for them for putting it on the album, because it's like, I couldn't do this. So
really great harmonies there.
So I'm going to give it a 3.5, just based on the fact that it's different, and you don't hear something like that every day. And, you got to have some talent to be able to pull it off. And it's pretty cool track.
I will give it a 4. I like that it tries something new, and it breaks up the, like I said, it breaks up that side of the album really nicely, and it's going to, obviously, as we see, it's going to fade into this next song with the percussion. Another thing it reminds me of is, have you ever heard the rough mix of, I think it's Beat It, or Michael Jackson does it like all a cappella? It's
No.
another one that, check it out if you haven't checked it out. It's just, I think it's just probably him with a 4-track just doing, and it sounds just like the Beat It song, but it's just him doing all the instrumentation with his voice and everything, and then singing over it. And it's just, when you hear something like that, you just can't help, when you hear this song we just heard, or the Bobby McFerrin thing, or the Michael Jackson doing Beat It a cappella, it's just seeing that raw talent
exactly. Yeah.
is really impressive. It kind of like what we talked about with Time and Again on our Northwinds episode, in our previous episode, just hearing David Coverdale and a piano, and being able to deliver a song that's so well written and so well structured that you don't need any bells and whistles to just make it stand out. It's kind of what that last song reminds me of.
Yeah, I think that's another thing to consider too. Not to always bring it back to Coverdale, but
it always comes back to Coverdale.
But it always comes back to him. But yeah, I mean, you can really, I feel, you can tell how talented somebody is, or how really good they are. Just raw talent they have when they're either doing a cappella, or it's just a person, like a vocalist and a keyboard, a vocalist and a guitar, or just them doing this kind of thing, even if it's overdubs in a studio. Because I mean, you still have to have the timing, you still have to be in tune, in key. And one of the things that like Coverdale has been proving recently with the songs that he's been doing, the songs from the dining room table on Twitter, is just like him and a guitar doing his old songs, and he can still nail it. I mean, it's in a different key, but he's still doing it. And, that just proves that the man can still sing. And to me, like anybody doing that, like even if it's like somebody that or like a local band, anything like that, it's just like, it's not easy. And, my thing is like, if you can't do it yourself, then you have no right to criticize.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
You
yeah,
know?
I could sit down with a microphone and every effect known to man here and multi-tracking and pitch correction and every other thing and wouldn't be able to make it sound half that good, which is just a guy probably just doing one track over another probably in an afternoon and get something like that put down. It's pretty great. And
Yeah.
it's a really good tune. I think it's a really catchy melody. It's great.
And I mean, to that point too, is like you could do a song like this today, like you said, like you could probably go in and like have all the auto tune and like all the different filters and stuff to clean it up and everything. And back then, he probably just like you said,
Oh
went
yeah.
in there and just did it, multi-tracked and like sang over it and everything with no, you know, no crazy effects or anything like somebody could do today. So I respect that a lot more, which is why I gave it that kind of rating. Like gave
Yep.
it a decent rating, even if it's something that I wouldn't seek out on the album and listen to again. You know, but it's good as part of the whole album for sure.
All right, next up, the second to last track on the second side of the album, From Another Time. Right into the percussion. This is like Tommy Bolin coming off of an Alphonse Mouzon sort of session.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can tell your face. You're loving this.
I forgot
like-
about this song. This part right here.
This is really good, actually.
I'm really glad I didn't listen to this going into this because it's been a while since I listened to this full album and all these little flashes are popping back up and it's now I know why I used to listen to it all the time.
That I feel like that's a part he used in a different song or live, something like that. I really like it though.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking about and I can't think of it.
This is really good. This kind of makes me think of like Sail Away.
I was thinking it makes me think of the Gypsy, just in its placement on the album and the kind of feeling it gives off.
I just think part of the vocal melody almost sounds like "Sail Away Tomorrow."
Oh, yeah. That's a good call. Even though this came out before that.
And he wasn't involved with Mark III.
Nope. Oh.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. He's like trading off licks with himself. It's so good.
That's how you know you're good.
And they don't even give you a second to breathe. They just go right back into this chorus. I love that little fake. Oh yeah, we're slowing down. We're gonna end it. Nope.
I love Tommy Bolin's phrasing.
Oh, so good.
He's just like he could do 1,000 notes a minute, but he won't.
He doesn't need to.
But see that he's like he'll like throw a couple of things in, then he'll. Oh. The hell?
I forgot about this part. The unexpected ending. I mean, he was 22 when they did this. Just Jesus.
But it's
Maybe I don't know exactly when it was recorded. Maybe he was 23,
but that's some of the cool stuff is like when he's doing his guitar parts, he'll be like, "Ba-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da," and then he'll just like let it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then he'll just stop. He'll let it breathe. He'll let some silence go, and then he'll just like.
I mean, I don't know if there's ever been anyone that was just such a natural. You know, he was so young. He'd only been, by this point, he'd been probably playing guitar for 7 years, you know, like just, but it was, he just had there's something ingrained in him to just be able to know when to play, when not to. And it wasn't anything planned. It was just, that's the kind of thing you can't teach and you can't learn. You know, you can hear all these other guitar wankers just playing a million notes a minute and doing every other thing and sweep arpeggios. And it's just like, yeah, you know what? It's impressive sometimes, but it gets, you know, it gets tiring really quick. But I never get tired of listening to Tommy Bolin put his own little spin on anything. It's always gold.
Well, look at all the different styles of music that he would play, and even on his own albums, like, I mean, he would do different versions, like different styles of like the same song. Like, I don't know if we talked about it on one of the other episodes, but wasn't there like some of his like archive CDs or whatever, there was like he did like several versions of the same song. Like he did like a rock version, a guitar like a acoustic version, the bossa nova version, the ballad version.
It might have been
you know,
on the Ultimate. Isn't Wild
right?
Dogs on there several, or People might be on there a couple of times.
Yeah, there was like the reggae version of People. It's like that might have been the song, but it's like the point is that he didn't just play with like you know, Billy Cobham and Alphonse Mouzon and these guys and Deep Purple and you know his even the what do you call it, Zephyr, like back in the early days, like the psychedelic 60s thing is like he would like continue on being like, all right, I would like do like all different kind of styles of the same song and see which one is like. That's, I feel like that was the kind of thing that was ingrained in his brain, which you know, probably made him such a great natural player, was just having love and interest and curiosity about all different types of music, not just like, oh, I'm a straight ahead rock guy. Like that's why I'm not a great musician. It's because I'm just like, I mean, I love all different types of music, but I'm just like single-minded. Like, yeah, I love rock. Like I wouldn't like when I wrote a song, it was like, all right, it's just the metal version. That's it. The end.
I got one version, the metal version.
Like no horns, none of that bullshit. Like,
well, I remember when we were recording our stuff, like when I would bring in a song, I had a few that I would, and I think it was partially inspired by Tommy Bolin and partially by like Ian Gillan doing the heck's the song on Cher Kazoo he does like 3 times. Jesus, why am I blanking on the song? That song
Driving Me Wild.
Yes. So I like inspired by that. Like he does like the slow version, the heavy version, and we had a few songs that I would do 2 or 3 different versions of. And I remember there was one song I did like the song that we ended up going with, and then I did one where it like went into, you know, it had a different time signature even, instead of being in 4/4, it was in like 6/8 or something. And just trying to mix it up. And I don't know where that kind of came from, but and I know the Beatles were famous for that. They would do 45 takes of a song. They do one, in, you know, all in different time signatures, different styles, different whatever. And it was kind of what kept the music so different from song to song. Why no albums has like apart from the early albums, no album really has like a one set style for it. It's everything's kind of jumping around. But
yeah.
All right. So what do you give From Another Time?
All right. I'm going to do it. I'm pulling out the big guns.
Oh,
I gotta give it a 5.
Oh,
I do. I love it.
Where is it? Wait, where is it?
It's very soft.
Okay. Hopefully it comes out. It's gonna sound great on the podcast.
Oh, I should have warned you to get it ready. Yeah, this is one of the reasons that I didn't listen to the album ahead of time either.
Mhm.
Actually, the only song that I heard recently, for some reason, something made me think about it, was Alexis, maybe a couple of
Yeah.
weeks ago, and prior to that, I hadn't heard it for like years. But this whole album I didn't listen to, and I'm glad I didn't, because this song really took me by surprise, and that's like, I don't know. It's just everything about it is great. It's indescribable why it's so great. But it's just really like, that's
It's
a song I would go back to and put on again. And
it's
like,
super like frenetic, and it's just like it gets you like amped up. You're like, and the melody of it. I love the melody of the bum, 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 bum. And like you said, it kind of like Sail Away. It's got that great song, that great sound to it.
mhm.
That cool little instrumental thing in it. And yeah, I gotta say, this is a song I've always loved every time I've listened to this, but I kind of forgot about it. Alexis coming into this, I was like, well, I know this is going to get a 5 because I
Mhm.
listen to that song all the time. I've always come back to Alexis because it's such a great song. This song, when I heard it again, I was like, oh man, this song, it's so good. And you know what? I'm giving it a 5 too. Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you. Yeah,
Well,
it just, I
the
just
other
love
thing
it.
too is like, the guitar solo too, the way that he kind of like, kind of diddles around a little bit and then just like rips into it. When you were just like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
Oh,
like, I love that kind of stuff. So
so good. I wasn't really expecting another 5 on this album, to be honest with you. And that man, that song is good. I can't
yeah,
wait to.
gotta give credit where it's due.
I feel like I'm going to be listening to this album again tomorrow morning. So,
Hmm.
all right, that leaves us with one track at the very end of this album as we close out side B. And that track, what is it? It's a mystery. No, it's called Mystery. This is the longest track on the album, 6 minutes.
I was going to say, that's another good thing about this album, is that there aren't really excessively long songs on here.
I knew what it was to be young once.
This was again written by John Tessar and Tommy Bolin.
And for a time I had forgotten, but now I think about being young again. Strange old feeling is a tugging on me.
That's Jim Fox, the drummer on the piano on this.
It's pulling me by the sleeve, calling me back to something I let go. So far behind and so long ago. Warm and wild springs near my old home.
I like where they're going to end the album with this song.
Any mystery of me. I'd like to share your secret again. Your body could soothe me.
I love how they fake you out into like it's gonna get this big build up. It builds up for a few bars and then it goes right back to the quiet part. And here's where the string arrangement comes in.
So cold. And for a time I had forgotten, but now I think about feeling love again. Strange old feeling is a tugging on me. It's pulling me by the sleeve, calling me back to something I let go. So far behind, so long ago. Warm and wild springs near my old home. Can you mystery? I'd like to share your secret again. Your body could soothe me.
Not really very chatty during this song, but trying to get into it, but I can't.
Not getting into it yet. I was. This part kind of reminds me of a Metallica interlude.
Oh yeah.
You can hear either a double bass with a bow, or maybe a cello.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's in there.
It's funny listening to this song and then looking at this album cover. It just doesn't seem to really line up. None of the songs really line up with this album cover. It's a weird one. It has a seafull vibe to it. This song.
Hmm.
I like these. I like these string arrangements, but I almost wonder, would it have been better served to kind of gel with the rest of the album to have Tommy Bolin do his Tommy Bolin thing over these parts, you know?
Yeah, because you're really not getting any Tommy here. You know, which is fine.
Yeah, I like that they're doing something a little different. Well, I mean, I like what they did with the orchestrations and stuff, and the fact that it wasn't just a standard orchestration of just them doing the chords. There was all this interesting. They'd go to pizzicato for a little bit. They're uh, kind of jumping around. You've got kind of this lead being taken by the double bass or cello or whatever it is.
Mhm.
But to me, it just doesn't seem like the song really ever goes anywhere.
No, it's unfortunately kind of a weak ending to the album. I think it's a little meandering, and it's kind of disappointing too, given, like you said, instead of all the orchestration, if they had kind of Tommy in there, yeah, doing some of his doing his thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we were. I mean, that's what we were really excited about. Not that, you know, this it just kind of like the a cappella track, that, you know, this wasn't creative and didn't take talent or anything. It was just kind of like, I don't know. I kind of like lost me on it. Like, this song could have been like half the length too. It just kind of meandered.
I think this length would have been fine, but to me, I mean, who the hell am I? But it seems like I really loved where they were going in the beginning of it, and when I said when the band kicks in and then it kicks back to the slow part of the verse, they're like, oh, that was just the tease for what's going to come up later. But then it never happens. It's like, you know, don't have a gun in the first act if it's not going to go off in the third act. You know, it's like they tease you, like, oh, there's a little buildup, and oh, we're going right back to the slow part. Okay, don't worry. And then if it had like an Alexis type ending, which is what I was kind of expecting from a song of this caliber, I think this could have been a much stronger close to the album, rather than it kind of like the album kind of just goes out on a whimper rather than going out with a bang, especially coming in from another time here.
A bang.
It's cool to bring it going out with a bang. There you go. But it's great to bring it down for a little bit. But I would have liked to see it work up to something a little bit more grandiose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
All
you
right,
know, meh. My rating is meh.
What's your numerical rating? How does that translate to in numbers?
3. Just a plain old 3. I can't really give anything on this album any lower, just because it is good. It's well, everything is well composed. Like, the song, it's just like disappointing too to just hear, like, I mean, any schlub with an acoustic guitar could have played that part. I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think it with a stronger. I mean, I really still love the album. But yeah, I think it could have closed a little stronger.
Mm-hmm. What do you give?
I give it a 3 as well for the closer. And I'd say, like I talked about already, Alexis going into it, I knew was going to get a 5 because it's always on my mind. From Another Time was a great reminder, and jumped out at me once again. Some other really strong songs like Standing in the Rain, and I really like that song for Dale. But overall, really good, solid album with some really good songwriting on it. It's kind of unfortunate for me that, I mean, I know we both gave 2 3s, but if I had to pick a weakest song of the album, it would be the last song. And that's, you'd want to go out with something strong.
Yeah. But I mean, no sense in trying to change it now, like,
after almost 50 years.
50 years later. But I mean, that's the whole thing. Like before, when you're just like, well, who am I? I mean, you're the person rating the song, so you're
right.
This is your subjective opinion.
Yeah, I'm not by any means the definitive answer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is if you don't like it, get your own podcast.
Yeah, and
seriously,
come up with a more creative name than the Deep Purple Podcast.
I know it's but seriously though, I mean, we know that we're not the the be all end all, but anybody listening to this wants to, hear our opinions on it. And if anybody disagrees, then we love a good spirited debate as to why.
Oh, for sure. And it's just about what resonates with you. That song was resonating with me. It just didn't really go anywhere as far as I was concerned, but this album in general resonates with me very well. It's
right. But like,
great.
I mean,
now I know why I used to listen to it all the time.
But I mean, I don't think anybody like, I mean, how disappointing would it be if there were like, half a dozen of us in the room, and like, half the people loved From Another Time, like, and then the other half didn't like it, and we would be like, what? But I mean, that's just as valid though, because that kind of song doesn't get everybody going like it gets us going. But obviously, like, our tastes are very similar, which is how we wound up being friends and doing this show in the first place.
Yeah, like I'll tell you right now, if I played this album for my wife, she would probably give a 5 to A Song for Dale. And she would probably give a 2 to From Another Time.
Oof. So she'd be one of the other,
and maybe a 1 to Mystery, because it would it's too long. It's longer than 3 minutes, and she cannot tolerate that. So it's all about what your personal taste is.
Exactly.
All right. So where does that leave James Gang Bang amongst our albums so far?
Well, the Bang, the Big Bang, got a slightly higher rating from you than me, but we're pretty in line. You had a 7.56 combined rating, which is very close to Dawn Explosion, and Teaser, oddly enough.
I gave it the exact same rating as I gave Teaser, funnily enough.
Blackmore's Rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's those are the ones I would say they come closest to. So I think it's kind of interesting that it comes the combined rating comes that close to another Tommy Bolin album, a Tommy Bolin solo album,
Yeah.
which honestly kind of shows you a little bit where we kind of hold him in our ratings. I was actually thinking mostly through this, like, this would have been a great Tommy Bolin solo album.
I mean, it almost was Tommy Bolin's solo album.
Yeah. Well, I mean, considering how many writing credits he has on it.
Right. Apart from him only doing vocals on one song, you can listen to a lot of the songs on this album and imagine Tommy singing them.
Oh yeah,
Although
I mean,
Roy Kenner was a little bit more of a dynamic singer than Tommy is, but
I mean,
Tommy's style works great for a lot of things.
Well, you could tell he was right singing in the style that Tommy Bolin sings in, even like the vocal effect, like that doubling vocal effect that he has on a lot of times is really similar to what Tommy used on his vocals too.
Oh yeah, and Standing in the Rain, like every time I hear that song, I have to remind myself at first it's not. I can just, my brain kind of replaces Tommy's voice because I can hear him singing that song so comfortably.
But yeah, overall, I think it's a pretty solid album. Like for me, I think it would be like a kind of a niche album. Like like I was saying before, I wouldn't pull this out and like rock out to it in the middle of December.
You need to be on the beach with a Mai Tai.
Yeah, really. I think, and that's kind of like the vibe that most of Tommy Bolin's albums give me, or anything that he's involved in is like, I don't know if anybody else thinks that way. They probably do, but it's a really kind of a summertime type album for me. Like, I have a kind of a list of albums that I listen to. Like, I really enjoy them most during, a certain season or a certain time. Like, this feels like a, this album type mood when you're driving to work or whatever, like the windows down. I'm sure everybody has that, kind of gets that feeling or that vibe, or they're going to go out to the pool, or they're going to go for a walk or something. And it's just like, yeah, this feels like this album kind of day, insert your favorite album here. So there's no right or wrong answer.
Yep. All right. So, not a ton, like I said, about this album. I did find one review from the, where is it? The AA Sun. I thought it was the Santa Ana Sun. I don't know if that's even a newspaper. I forget where exactly I found this, just probably in a random Google search. But here's the review, and it doesn't really, it starts off like reviewing some other album, which is apparently looks like Eddie Henderson's Inside Out, was like a jazz trumpet guy. Not too familiar with this album. They're invoking Herbie Hancock's Headhunters, in which case I would probably want to listen to this because I love Headhunters, and Herbie Hancock played on this album as well. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the James Gang Bang album, and it says, "Readers beware, the James Gang is on the loose again, but don't be too alarmed. This is the rockin' and rollin' James Gang and not those notorious robbers of yesteryear. The only way the new James Gang might want some of your money would be via the purchase of their new album, Bang. Back about 5 years ago, the James Gang from Cleveland, Ohio, ventured into Detroit's Grand Ballroom, playing tunes by Buffalo Springfield, Cream, and others. Much to the surprise of everyone, they sounded almost identical to these big-name groups who were making at least 5 times the money the gang was offered. Of course, as time went on, the group played more and more around different parts of the United States. They adopted their own style and soon had a national following. Then, just as they seemed destined for even bigger and better things, the band leader, Joe Walsh, decided to quit the group. Walsh thusly formed Barnstorm and is currently doing quite well for himself. Oh, I didn't know about the Barnstorm. Thought he just went to the Eagles. And is currently doing quite well for himself. Meanwhile, the new James Gang have put out their couple of LPs, including this one, With the quality of Bang, I'm sure the James Gang are once again headed to the top of the rock and roll scene. Standing in the Rain, Ride the Wind, Must Be Love, and From Another Time will make you dance around your stereo system. Or The Devil is Singing Our Song, Alexis, which they misspelled as Alexix.
Alexis.
Got No Time for Trouble and Mystery will ease your mind and relax you as much as an hour in a sauna. That includes almost every song on this LP, and believe me, it's harder than ever to find an album these days that you can listen to from the very beginning to the end, by Stanley T. Zilifro.
It's pretty complimentary.
Yeah. And I think if I had a stereo, I would be dancing around it listening to this.
Would you be dancing madly backwards?
I'd be dancing madly forward, sideways, and any other way. There you go. Stanley Zilifro. Oh, looks like he passed away in 2011. That's
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Stanley T.
You wrote a good review.
You sure did. Yeah, it's the only way. It's literally the only one I can find. So,
That's cool.
I even asked around in some of the Tommy Bolin groups, and everyone came up empty. So, stumbled on this one. Yeah, there you have it. James Gang Bang. Good luck looking up anything in image search for this album.
Well, don't look it up at work because
yeah, exactly.
Not safe for work. James Gangbang.
Yeah, exactly. Your boss.
If you say it a different way, James Gangbang.
Try explaining that when your boss calls you in. You were Googling this James Gangbang. What's going on? No, I can explain.
Who's James?
I just wanted a gangbang of all people named James. It's a very weird fetish that I have.
Oh my God. Well, for all we know that they meant that. They were just kind of like, that was their inside joke. They were just like, they were just like, we're the James Gang. What should we call it? Oh, Bang.
Because then people have to say it right after they say gang.
But it's I've heard weirder things. I mean, look at Van Halen with their album Buck.
It's usually not. Usually people are a little more delicate.
It's a clever way of doing that.
It's very clever. I remember, when that came out, I'm like, oh, do you know what they named their album? Think about it, man. We're like, so
think about it, man.
Think about the first letter in each word. You're like, oh, you ate one too? These guys had nothing better to do.
Just like, did you hear speaking of which, did you hear about, I had heard a story recently about why they named the album OU812.
What?
Is because
I did not know that.
David Lee Roth obviously left after 1984 and had his own solo album called Eat 'Em and Smile. So supposedly their response was, "Oh, you ate one too?
Good one, guys."
I'm sure that's not true. But
be like, hey, David Lee Roth, you burned.
Zing!
You just got burned so bad. Absolutely scathing.
Some of these things I don't like. I don't know.
Oh man,
it's kind of like there's another good one that I laughed out loud at. Can't remember which podcast I was listening to, but they said that if Kiss were to release another album now, they would call it music from the elderly. So
yeah, that's like the kind of jokes that they used to say about like the Rolling Stones. I remember like in the late 80s they were making jokes about like, in Mad Magazine they show them all on stage in like wheelchairs with like
a steel wheelchair tour.
IV, and like they were like 40.
Well, I mean, I know that's it's I think just shows how everything's evolved now, because you didn't really have, I mean, of course you had musicians in their 60s, 70s and beyond, like
But not
performing, but
rock
it was
musicians.
exactly, it was mostly like
Old blues guys or like
yeah,
jazz
big band,
guys or whatever.
those kind of acts like Sinatra, people like that, never rock or even metal bands. Like, I mean, imagine I don't know, like another like 15, 20 years from now, Metallica still performing.
Yeah, which is very some one of those sites, I don't even want to talk about it, but they had something like, oh, James Hetfield comes back from rehab looking like elderly. It was all over the news today, and I was like, what are they I remember they put out a video like 3 days ago of them doing like an acoustic version of
Hmm.
Blackened,
Yeah.
and they're like, he looked great. I'm like, I didn't even click on the stupid article, but I'm like, they just wanted clickbait and get you over there. But I saw the headline, and just those headlines just annoy me so much.
Well, I mean, it's life. It's life, people. People age.
And also,
But
I mean,
first of all, he doesn't look elderly, but I mean,
no,
he's
he
not going to
looks
look like he
great.
did in 1983 either.
No, I probably looks better than he looked in 1983. He looked a little older, but better.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's not like in a constant state of being hung over
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
and deprived of sleep, I'm sure, whiplash from headbanging and everything else. I mean, that's really the goal, if you think about it. I mean, is to get to be that age, or even like, let's talk about our boys, Deep Purple. I mean, we saw them like, several months ago. I mean, they're well into their 70s, and they're doing everything right because they're still up there playing like rock music.
Yep.
Right. I mean, it's just like, Jesus. I remember, what was the song they played on Bloodsucker?
Oh yeah.
I mean, all right, like, I'm just picturing like my dad getting up there, like playing Bloodsucker, somebody the same age as my dad getting up there and just being like, and I mean, of course, he didn't, like, Gillan didn't sing it the way he used to, but still.
Dad have like
The glasses down
the
at the edge of your
the
nose.
iPad balanced on the belly. Oh. Oh no. Okay, time to.
Or the microphone.
Oh man.
But I mean, you got to give people that kind of credit, because they have to eat right. They got to get enough sleep, exercise, be in good health.
Yeah, if you look at Gillan now and look at a picture from 10 years ago, he looks better now, because he's lost some weight. He looks healthier now than he did then.
Exactly.
I mean,
so
definitely doing something right. But.
Yeah. So, and that's yeah, I'm glad that that's the state that music's in. The future of music is like our music, this kind of rock music being performed by, I mean, we're lucky to still have like these older gents around still
Yeah, the
rocking it out.
only thing at this point, I'm just holding out hope that when all this craziness gets over, they can maybe have one last, we didn't want the long goodbye tour to end this way. Hopefully they're able to get out there for at least a little bit more before they call it quits.
Yeah, well, I mean, at any rate, I mean, we're both lucky enough and had the presence of mind to go see them.
Yeah, thank God.
Back in October or whenever. Did you see them, October or November?
Yeah, October.
October, yeah. So I'm glad we did. So I mean, if the long goodbye was cut short to the longish goodbye,
yeah,
then at least we got to see them, one more time. I'm happy. But yeah, I echo that sentiment. I hope that this is not the end of the long goodbye.
No.
By any means. So.
All right. Well, that covers James Gang's Bang album, and we'll have to be back at you with the Miami album at some time soon, and that'll round up the Tommy Bolin era of the James Gang. But that's all we got for this week.
That's it.
Yep. Until next week, I will talk to you later.
Later, Gator.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple podcast.
If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also give us a rating on iTunes to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.